where we'll be covering the customization options of the Evergreen interface. Primarily, we'll be looking at two customizable features, specifically the staff portal page, which we tend to refer to as the splash page in NC Cardinal, and carousels that you can put up on your library's OPAC. So we'll be looking at both of those options, and if we get to the end and we still have a little bit of time, we can talk a little bit about some other things that may be available to you. But those are the two main customization options that are available directly to staff. We're going to start by talking about the staff portal page. So as I said, this is what we refer to typically in NC Cardinal as the splash page. So it's this page that you see right when you log into Evergreen. Some of our libraries have already customized this page. So, if what you usually see when you go into Evergreen does not look like this, it means your library is already doing that. But if you are at one of the majority of our libraries who have not yet customized your splash page, then today we're going to talk about what options are available and how you can customize that splash page. So there are a few basic options. Primarily, you can create links to menu options for regular functions you use often. So if you look at the current splash page, the default one, you have direct links to checkout items, check-in items, search for patrons by name, search the catalog, record buckets, item buckets, Evergreen documentation, workstation administration, and reports. What you can do through customization is add additional options from these menus up here that you usually would use to navigate through Evergreen to these boxes on the splash page. So, if you want to have an option for your holds pull list right here when you first log into Evergreen, you can add that to your circulation box, for example. If you want to kind of remove the cataloging box and replace it with a different box that's relevant to other staff members, then you can do that as well. So the main thing that you're doing when you are customizing is adding new menu options to that home screen that you see when you log in. You can also add images and icons. So if you look at the splash page, you see that they already all have an icon, but you can update these if you'd like to. And then also when you add new options here, you can also add images and icons to them. There are a small number of sort of stock ones available. We'll talk about which ones those are and how you can use them. But you also, if you have a way to host them, someplace where you can get a URL, then you can also use any images of your own as well. You can clone another library splash page. So like if you're looking at Henderson's splash page and you're like, this is really great, I want to have something just like this, you can just take it. Cloning is also a necessary part of any updates that you make. So if you decide you want to take the regular splash page and just add one additional option, you do need to also clone the main Cardinal splash page before you do that. We'll talk about what that looks like in a few minutes, but cloning is an option both for your basic updates that you may want to make, or if you really like how another library has updated their splash page. And then you can also create specialized splash pages for limited service branches. So if your bookmobile has a very limited number of things that you would like to have available to staff on that bookmobile, you can create a splash page focused on the bookmobile that's going to come up anytime somebody's logged into a workstation at the bookmobile. So that's something to keep in mind, if you want to not have cataloging options for your bookmobile or something like that. Now, you can't make it even more granular than that. You can't say, your youth services splash page looks different than your adult services splash page or anything like that, but you can make different branches have a different splash page. I wouldn't recommend doing that too much, but if you do have some sort of specialized branches that you would like to have function a little bit differently, that is an option. Also, if you're in a really large sort of regional system and you'd like to have different options, at different levels of that region, you can do that as well. Keep in mind that none of this changes the actual functionality of any of the options in Evergreen. It just changes what's visible on that initial portal page when you first log in. And one other thing that I didn't put in here, you can also put external links as well. So, primarily what we'll be talking about today is putting in menu items, but if you wanted to say put a link out to to our knowledge books, to the NC Cardinal knowledge books. Over here, we have Evergreen documentation. That takes you to documentation from the Evergreen project. So kind of default Evergreen documentation. If you wanted to change that to specifically our knowledge book page, you could do that. Or if you wanted to have a link out to, your library's Libby or NC Kids or something like that from the splash page, you could put those links in here as well. So that is an option too. So there are several different entry type options that you can use when customizing your splash page. The first one is that catalog search box. This is part of the default splash page. So you already have it. You don't need to add it again. But if you do redo the splash page completely from scratch, then you can add this back in manually. Header, which I've got a typo here for, I apologize for that. Headers are these green bars at the tops of boxes. So you can create as many boxes as you'd like. If you want to have 6 boxes here, when your staff first logs in, then you can do that, and you can have headers for each of them where they're labeled based on the category of that box. Links to external websites or direct links to existing Evergreen functions, which would be menu items. And then you can also just do text and HTML. So if, for example, with what we have in the default page over here where we show the upcoming training opportunities, and I'm in next right now, so it's a lot out of date. This is just text. There's obviously some links in here, but for the most part, this is just flat text. And so you can do that if you want to have notes for your staff, reminders, and it doesn't have to be just sort of Evergreen related reminders. You can also say, remember there's a book sale coming up or something like that. Just make sure you stay on top of it. That's one of the problems that I often have with this flat text, is that sometimes something may linger for a day or two after I've completed the webinar. So you do have to remember to keep it up if you're doing that sort of reminder. But you can have text and things like that. So you have a lot of options with what you can do here. And we're going to look at a few of them. We're not going to do necessarily all of this, but we're going to go through sort of the heavy hitters of them. I did mention images, and so I just wanted to show a list of the stock images that are available. So when you go in to add an image, you'll have to put in a URL for the image. If you want to use one of the stock ones available in Evergreen, you'll just take this /images/portal/ and then the file name here. You don't need to have the ncardinal.org part at the beginning. You just need this part that I've got here on this slide. So I'll go ahead and put that in the chat. And then you would just put that in with the file name for the image that you wanted to use. We can take a look at a couple of these just so you see what they look like. Let's take a look at holds, for example. So if I go to there we go. And I just put in holds.png. Should take us directly into picture of the little holds icon. It's not. Give me just a second. There we go. All right, so this is what that icon looks like directly. If I just change this to holds.png, and you don't ever need to put it into the URL box. So the struggle I'm having right here is not necessarily going to be repeated by you. I'll show you where you actually put it in when you're creating it. But this is what that holds icon looks like. So you can go through and use any of these. Let's look at the register patron as well. Later. So this is the icon that you would have available to you for registering a patron. Like I said, if you did want to use your own icons or images, you can do that. You just have to have a place to host them that will offer a URL that you can use. And when we actually go in to make some changes, you'll see why you need that URL. But so these are the ones that are available to you, and you're welcome to, use any of them. It's very straightforward to use them. If, however, you would like something outside of these, it's not too difficult to add something external. The one thing to keep in mind when adding an external image is wherever you're hosting it, it does need to be a secure website, which means it has to start with that HTTPS rather than just HTTP. So just be aware of that. If you do not have access to the ability to post something on that type of server providing that type of URL, then you wouldn't be able to use external images. All right, those are sort of the basics that I wanted to talk about. And from this point forward, we're just going to look at the actual process of customization. Are there any questions before we get into that, though? All right, well, the customization process is fairly straightforward, but can feel a little bit finicky while you're working within it. So the actual steps to it are very easy. You scope to your system, you clone Cardinal's page, you add whatever fields you want, and then you update and edit as needed. Now you can skip step 2 if you don't want any of the basic stuff that we have at Cardinal, if you basically want to start from scratch. But if you just want to take the regular default version and add a single field, you would need to clone. I'll show you the difference in just a moment. So this seems very easy. The issue comes in when you're actually trying to make those updates. Sometimes they can feel a little bit like very particular. So we'll take a look at a couple of the different updates that are available to you. And I would suggest that before you get started for real, that you log into Next or Dev and practice in there a little bit, just because, if you do make a mistake, then that is live immediately. So you want to just kind of get your feel for it before you go in to do it for real. So the customization itself, fairly straightforward. The details of doing it, we'll look at sort of one at a time. So in order to customize, you're going to go into the administration menu. You're going to go to local admin, and you're going to choose staff portal page over here. So from here, it's going to automatically scope you to the branch that you're logged into. You want to take that up to your actual system. So I'm going to go, you can do that 2 ways. You can just click ancestors, and that's going to bring you up. What you're going to see here is everything that Cardinal has, as well as anything that your system may already have. You can also just go directly to your system, and that's going to remove the Cardinal aspect of it. And then this is what you'll see if you've done no customizations at all. You'll see a blank screen. Now, if you wanted to do a customization just for a specific branch, then you would stay scoped at that branch. So it's fine to stay scoped at your branch if that's what you're customizing for. For the most part, I think most people are going to be customizing for the system, though. So if you want it to be the same across all of the branches in your system, then you'd want to go up to the system level here. And we've got a couple of things we can do from here. We could just create a new portal page entry, or we can clone a library's portal page entries. So if I wanted to just create one, I can come in here and I can call this patrons. And let's say that we're going to do this as a header. So I'm creating a box that says patrons. And my target URL, let me grab that real quick. Oh, for the header, we don't need one. The other thing that I need to do at this point is put in the location of where on the page I'd like this box to show up. So I'm creating a header for patrons, and I want it to show up on the left side of the page and at the top. I'm going to set my owner here to bug phone, so at the system level, and save it. So this seems great. I've added a new box for patrons. Let's go check it out by just clicking on the home button. And you'll see what happened is that all of the basic default stuff has disappeared. So that's why if you just wanted to add one or two things to the existing page, you have to clone. Because if as soon as you customize, it wipes it clean. So if I go back, if I go into another library system, I'm going to be able to get, in terms of my where I'm logged in, then I'm going to be able to see the standard NC Cardinal page. But because I'm logged in Bunkum right now, all I'm seeing is this one header that we've created for Bunkum. So in order to see the basic NC Cardinal stuff, I need to clone NC Cardinal's staff portal page first. So let's try adding that. So again, I'm going to scope up to my system. And I am going to click Clone a Libraries portal page entries. My source library is Cardinal. So starting at the very top, my target library is Bunkum. Now I have two options. I can clear this one box that I created, and it's just going to wipe it clean and clone all of Cardinal's default things to show up here at my new Bunkum page. Or I can leave this in here and this will be visible along with everything that I'm cloning. And that's what I'm going to do. So I'm not going to clear it. I'm just going to go ahead and leave that visible. So I'll click clone. And so now all of the fields that exist at the Cardinal level are now visible within this Bunkum page. Cheryl asked if she needs to select descendants after she scoped to the system. No. Basically, what the scoping here does is if you click descendants here, then you would see any fields that are specific to any of the branches. So, if you were to create one portal page that covers all of your system, but then a specific portal page for just one branch, like a bookmobile, then you might want to click descendants if you want to see all of your system stuff as well as the bookmobile stuff all at once. Generally, I'd recommend against that because it could get a little confusing. What I would usually suggest you do is when you're working within the system owned things, the things that will show up across your system, you want to be scoped to your system. If you're working just within a branch, you want to be scoped to your branch, and you want to avoid clicking these buttons once you've kind of gotten started. Does that make sense? Okay. So now we have that patron box that we created, as well as everything that we cloned from Cardinal. So let's take a look again. And we're going to do it here so that I don't have to go back through the menu. And what has happened is it took that header that we created for patrons and it just replaced the circulation header because I put that in the same spot where the circulation header is meant to be. And that's not necessarily what I want. I want to go in and make a separate box for patrons. So that's what we're going to do next. But otherwise, you'll see that we have all of these fields that were part of the regular Cardinal page. So let's come back into our portal page interface. And we're going to come into this, this patron field that we had created. And I think what we're going to do this time is we're going to not make this the first box. We're going to make it a later box. So I'm going to open it up just by double clicking it. And instead of having it in page column 1, column position 1, I'm actually going to make it column 5. And so what that's going to do is move this patron header down here. Basically, the way that this is set up, no matter how you number things, you're going to get a row of 3. And then the next number, 4, is going to be underneath. And then 5 would be the middle one in the second row. 6 would be here. If you have 7, it would show up down here. Which is a little bit frustrating. You can't like center things or anything like that, which is why the training opportunities box kind of just hangs here because you can't create a column here in the center of the second row if you don't have one to the left side. So it's not fully customizable, but just something to be aware of. So now we've got our patron box here, and the circulation box that we originally had has reverted to its original title. So we're going to come back up here. We're going to change this circulation box to just say circulation and not say patron. So that'll be our next step. So to do that, I need to find that entry, that portal page entry within the list. It's right here, circulation and patrons. Now you do have the ability, of course, to filter your grid a little bit. So if it wasn't the second one and I didn't see it right away, but I knew that the thing I wanted to do was edit this circulation and patrons field. The way that I could find it kind of quickly is by going to this entry type column and clicking on my little pyramid menu here and filtering for headers. And so that's going to filter my list down to only those entries that are headers. So it makes it a little bit faster to find this circulation and patrons header. So I'll go ahead and double click this. And all I'm going to do here is delete the and patrons. And so I'll save that. And so now my splash page has a circulation box and a patron box. But here in the circulation box, I have search for patron by name. I don't want that here. I want it here. So the next thing we're going to do is move an existing entry to a different place on the page. So we're going to come back here. This is no longer a header that we're working with. This is, I believe, a menu item. It is, so search for patron by name. In order to move this to a new spot, I'm just going to double click it. And I'm going to come down here to page, column, and column position. So as you may remember, when we made that patron header, we put it in column 5. So that's what I'm going to do here. Column position 1. So within this column, this essentially row 1 is the header itself, which says patrons. So this is going to be our first entry within this box. So we're going to make it 2. So I've saved this. And if we refresh, then our circulation box is just checking out and checking in. And our patron box now has search for patron by name. So that was fairly easy. But it's one of those things where you just kind of, there are a lot of moving pieces that you just sort of have to pay attention to as you go. Before we move on to actually creating some new entries, are there questions about what we've done so far? Just kind of a recap. Basically, what we've done is we've cloned the standard NC Cardinal splash page. We've created a new category here for patrons. We have changed the name of a header. And we have moved an entry from one box to another box. So we've been basically doing some editing to that existing page. The next thing we're going to do is looking at adding some new entries to the page as well. But before we do that, if there are any questions, let me know. All right, well, let's go ahead and add some more things to this patron box that we've created here. So I'm going to come back in here and I'm not going to worry about my filtering. I am adding menu items, so I'm already filtered where I'd want to be. And because I'm adding, I really don't need to see what's in the grid to begin with. To add a new portal page entry, I'm going to click new portal page entry up here. And first, I'm going to give it a label. This is what is actually going to show up, the text that's going to show up for this entry. And I'm going to call it register. Oh my goodness. New entry. The entry type is going to be a menu item. And I do need to put in the target for that menu item. So I come into Evergreen, I go to the menu where I would find the thing I want, which is under circulation, register patron. So I just go ahead and open up this interface and then I copy the URL. Obviously I'm in Next right now, so the URL I'm copying is that Next URL. When you are in production and this is live, it's going to be the regular live URL. So I go ahead and paste that URL right in here. I can decide how I want it to open. Do I want this to open in a new tab where the splash page stays open in my current tab and this is just a brand new tab that comes up, or do I want it to open within the tab I'm already in? I'm going to select that. I'm not going to have it open in a new tab. Now I can add additional text here about, kind of what this function is. Let's add patron or to check IDs. So you can use this to explain what the function is. You can use it to put in reminders about, sort of policies for what you do when you use this function. You can use this text page for just about anything you want. I would caution against using it too much and creating just paragraphs of text because it's going to make the splash page a little bit heavy to wade through. But you can definitely use this if you need to add a little bit of extra context. Now, to add one of the logos, one of the icons, I can put in the URL here. And I'm going to use one of those stock images that are available from Evergreen. So I want register patron. So I'm going to use my images/portal portion of the URL. Something from the chat. And then I want this to be register patron, all one word, .png. And now if you are using external images that you're creating yourself, they do need to be either a PNG or a JPEG for this. I want this to be in my patrons box, so that's column 5. And I want it to be just below the search for patrons, which is at row 2. So this is going to be row 3 or column position 3. And I want the owner to be buncoming. If I made the owner just pack, that means that you would only see this this entry come up if you were at a workstation at pack, not anywhere else in the buncombe system. So again, it's really important that you're paying attention to the system versus branch when you're creating these things. So I'll go ahead and click save, and let's take a look. Go back to our splash screen. And so now here under patrons, we've got register a new patron and the icon. The text did not show up. And I think I actually know why. I think the text is only available when you are creating a text-based entry, which we're going to do next. So you'll see what that looks like. So that was creating a new menu item entry with using one of the stock icons. Any questions about that? All right. Well, next, let's go ahead and do a text-based entry. So I'm going to come back in here. And again, I'm going to click new portal page entry. And this time I'm going to make my label reminder. And my entry type is going to be text. I do not have a URL for this one because it's a text, although I can embed a link. If you know some HTML, you can use that HTML to embed links within the text, and then you would put your entry text into this box. So again, I'm going to put this in column 5. I'm going to put this just below the entry that we just made. So I'm going to put it at position 4, and I'm going to put it at save this. And now if we refresh our splash page, it should show up. Yep. So we get our little label and then our information here. So you can add text as you want to. If you do know HTML, you can embed HTML within that text. That's how I have things like my link over here to register for virtual events. So you do have some options there. And then the final thing that I wanted to do was to just kind of clean up some of the rest of this stuff. We're going to add some things to our circulation box to make it a little bit fuller and just kind of create our own customized look. So I'm going to come back in here. Let's add to our circulation box the pull list for hold requests. Then pull list here. Our entry type is going to be, again, a menu item. We're going to put in our URL. And we're going to put this in 1, which is our circulation box. And we're going to put this at position 4. And again, I'm going to have it owned by the system. Now, this one, we did not put in an image. You see, we just have the link. And, you know, that stock image list is fairly short and specific. So you may go outside of that list. You may be adding things for which there is not a stock image. I'm going to go ahead and add an image to that, I think. Let's see. I have taken an image that Henderson County is using for their pull list icon, and I'm going to go ahead and use that one because it looks really nice. So I've done that, and so now our pull list has an icon as well. So you can just continue adding things, you know, putting in additional menu options as you go. Let's add one more thing, which would be an external URL. Let me grab our knowledge book. Oh, it's nancycardinalsupport.org. So we're going to go ahead and add a new portal page entry for this. And for this one, we're going to choose link. We'll put in our URL. We'll put this in our 3rd column, and we'll put this bottom, which is 4. Actually, you know what? Let's put this at the top, and I'll show you how you move things around within a box. So I'm going to put this at the top. But in order to make that work, I need to change the rest of the box to reflect that we have a new first item. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come here to what is currently the first item, which is Evergreen documentation. And I'm going to make this column position 2. Then let's see what's underneath it. Workstation administration. That's going to be a menu item. Administration. Here we go. I'm going to make this 3. And then reports, we're going to make 4. So if you don't do that, it kind of works if you just put something in as the first one. But if you then make any further edits to that box, everything, the order like goes all over the place because it just doesn't know what to do with it. So if you do add a new entry to a box and you want that entry to be at the top, you then have to change the column position for anything that comes underneath it in order to make room for that new top level position. Let's take a look. So now we've got our knowledge books followed by Evergreen documentation, workstation admin, and reports. I could keep doing this for a significantly longer period of time until I made this look almost as good as Henderson's, probably not actually as good, but I am going to spare you watching me do that. But if anybody does have any questions or something that they'd like to see me do, let me know, and I'd be happy to do a couple more entries to kind of look at some other ways that you can do things. So if there are any questions or if there's something you'd like to see, let me know. You know what, while I wait to see if there are any questions, I will show you one more, which is how to delete something. So let's say we want to, now that we've added our knowledge books, let's say we want to delete the Evergreen documentation link. Let's come back in here and let's So in order to delete one, all you have to do is select it from the grid. And under the actions menu, you just choose delete selected. Back now, we'll see that now that one's missing. And so Cheryl asked if a column can be removed altogether. It can. So a couple of things to keep in mind when we're moving a column. Let's go ahead and do that. And let's remove this training one here. I'm going to remove my filter so we see everything. And basically what you have to do when you're removing a column is you have to remove every entry within that column. So if you're keeping some of those entries and you just want to move them, do that first. And then whatever remains, you can get rid of. So let's say that we wanted to keep, well, you know what we can do is that we can sort by column or filter by column. So I'm going to filter down to column 4. That'll make it easier to find everything there. Let's say that we wanted to keep this text here. The first thing I need to do if I wanted to keep this text is edit it to put it in a different column. So I'm going to put this in column 5 and I'm going to put it at the bottom. And so now that's out of the way. It should show up here. Now I just want to delete everything here, which is 2 entry points. It is the header entry and it is the text entry. So I select both of these and I delete them. And so now they are gone. But what's happened is our middle second row column has moved to the left, which is, you know, a little bit confusing because we do have this listed as column 5 and it's still showing up as though it's column 4. It's not a huge deal. I don't think that'll make any major problems. The way the order list sometimes can mess up, but it could be confusing later if you try to add additional columns. So just, it may be worth coming in and changing all of what's in here. Column 5 and changing all of these to column 4. I'm actually going to leave this one in column 5 because I'm going to show you what that looks like if you accidentally miss one of those movements. So if I refresh this, we can see now that all the patron stuff that I moved to column 4 has moved, is exactly where it was before. It's just the underlying information about it is column 4. But this one that I failed to change did not stay with everything else. Instead, it is in column 5. Whereas everything else became column 4. So this is what it looks like if basically you have a box without a header. The columns are created simply by the fact that an entry point has been put in that column. It doesn't have to have a header to be a column. So if you wanted to have something that, you know, was just kind of floating here that maybe you didn't want to call as much attention to as the other things, if you wanted to be able to call out different types of things. Maybe you have a box that's just text with reminders and stuff and you want it to look a little different, then you can do that by simply not having a header. And that's what this would look like. So did that fully answer your question, Cheryl? Do you have any follow-ups? Sure. I'm happy to just kind of leave this up and you can come in and play with it however you'd like to. You know, feel free. It's next, so you're not going to break anything by messing around with it. And I'm happy to just not take the time to undo everything I've done today. So, and that does actually bring up a thing, which is that if you wanted to revert back to just the basic NC Cardinal page, the way that you would do that is by just deleting everything that you have. And if you have nothing, then it's just going to default to the splash page. To the default splash page. So if you ever decided that you've had enough with keeping up the customized version of it or something, that's how you would sort of get rid of your customized version. All right, well, let's go ahead and we've got about 20 minutes left. Let's talk about carousels. But if anyone does have any follow-up questions about the splash page, let me know. I'm happy to kind of come back to this and take a closer look at anything. So carousels are typically something that catalogers would work with. I think system admins do have some permissions that allow them to work with carousels, though. So it depends on the type of carousel, I think. But there are basically a few different types of carousels that you can do. There are carousels for newly cataloged items, and this basically allows you to set sort of a time frame and a number of titles that you'd like to have in your carousel, so 20, 30, or whatever, and then also shelving location. So if you only want to feature adult fiction or something like that, you can basically create a carousel that is going to automatically populate with any items within the shelving location you identify and the time period you identify. If you set the number that you'd like to appear in that carousel and you have more newly cataloged items than that number, it will randomly select which ones will show up in there. You can also do a carousel of recently returned items. So as items are returned, they would show up in this carousel and just be like, look at the hot thing that everybody's checking out. Again, this is going to be based on the shelving location that you select. So if you only want to feature a specific type of material, and then you would set a date range for the check-in time. So whenever something's checked in, it would automatically sort of go into this pool of items that could be pulled for this carousel. Now, your top circulated items carousel, again, this is an automatic one, and this is going to be based on whatever items circulate the most. And when you're setting up the carousel, you can sort of set a definition of that threshold. So a big library may have a threshold of something's got to circulate more than 20 times to be included. A small library may only have, 5 times. So you would kind of decide what you would like your threshold for that circulation to be. And the titles are chosen based on an interval. So, it's not the thing that is circulated the most over the entire lifetime of your library, which may not necessarily correlate with the most popular items. It would be the things that have circulated the most during a time frame that you select. You do not have to have this for shelving locations. You can select specific shelving locations, but you don't have to. These other two, newly cataloged and recently returned, you do have to select a shelving location. You can select more than one, but you do have to have that. The top circulated titles, you can just make this library wide. And then the newest items by shelving location is exactly what it sounds like. Basically, when a new item is made active, whatever shelving location is, it's going to create a carousel for it. So oddly, you don't have to set the shelving location for this one. As things are added, Evergreen will sort of create carousels across shelving locations that will reflect these materials. So a few different options that are just sort of automatic options. You have to do a little setup on the back end to make these visible, to make them functional. But once you've done that, they will update automatically based on actions within the system. There's also the ability to create manual carousels where you are selecting the titles, and we'll talk about those in a moment. We're going to go ahead and create a stop carousel. Are there any questions about any of those types? We're going to go ahead and do some of this. And so hopefully if you do have questions, you'll kind of see that work out as we go through the process. So again, this is going to be in your local administration splash page. And you'll just go into new carousels where you will, once again, set your own library to system. And then you'll basically fill out the form with whatever information you need for the type of carousel you're making. The only thing you have to make sure that you're doing is setting it to active. If you don't set it to active, it won't show up on the OPAC. And then once you're done, you will have to refresh in order to actually populate these automatic carousels. So let's look at that process from start to finish. So I'm going to go to my local administration splash page, and I'm going to choose carousels. And I'm going to, once again, I'm going to go up to my system, and I'm going to click new carousels. Oh, this was happening last week. It stopped happening, and now it's happening again. Sometimes I have found in Next when I change the scoping, I get this weird failure to load issue. So I'm just not going to change the scoping. So I'm going to click new carousels, and this is going to be the form that I have to fill out. Now I don't really need to change the scoping here because of course I set the scope here when I set the owner, just like with the splash page. So I can set this at the buncombe level, even though I'm scoped to pack. But once you've started making carousels, it's helpful to scope to where you are or to your system, because that's where you'll be able to see all the carousels you've created. You can't do that if you're automatically scoped to your branch. But let's go ahead and scope our owner to buncombe. And let's name this carousel. We're going to go ahead and do a newly cataloged item carousel. Our carousel type, so we're going to choose newest items by shelving location. We're going to set our age limit. So this is, what do we consider a new item? Do we want this to just be in the last 30 days? Do we want it to be in the last 3 months? Now, because we're in Next and it was updated in about August, we don't have anything, unless it was something that came in because we were testing a process. We don't have anything that's newer than mid-August. So I'm going to set my age limit a lot older than you probably would want to for this. I'm actually going to set it to 1 year. But you can do this. It's pretty, I haven't tried too many things to see what would break this age limit thing. But basically you would put in the numeric digit and then days, months, or year. I have not tried weeks. I don't know if weeks would work. Feel free to experiment. I'm not going to here because I'd have to put in, 50 or something for this to be functional. For maximum items, I'm going to have 30 items in this carousel. I need to choose who owns those items. So as those of you who catalog or who work with reports know, items are not owned by a system. Items are owned by a branch. So I do need to put in the branches from within my library. I can't just choose buncombe. So I'm going to put in pack and click add. I'm going to put in South Asheville and click add. And I'm going to put in Black Mountain. Obviously, Cheryl, and if you're doing this for buncombe, you're probably going to do more than just 3 branches, but I don't think we need to sit through the process of me finding all of them. So I'm just going to do these 3. And then you also need to choose your shelving locations. So I'm going to just choose adult fiction and click add. I could do more than 1. There is not a maximum number of items. I would keep it mildly limited just so that I'm not sure if there's ever a point where it would break, but you definitely would. I would imagine load times might be a little slower if it's too many. I'm not sure what the standard is. I'd be happy to look into that. Usually when I'm testing, I do it somewhere between 20 and 30. That seems like a good size when I'm looking at them. So there's not an official maximum. I don't know what the point where it would become unwieldy would be, but I usually don't go above 30 myself. But I'd be happy to look and see what other people are doing. Now I can add additional shelving locations here. So I've got adult fiction. Let's also add adult audiobook. And now I do need to make sure that I make this active. So I click yes. And that's my form. Now, if I was doing a different carousel type, I might not need to fill in all of these. If I don't need an age range, I wouldn't need to fill this in. If I don't need shelving locations, I wouldn't need to fill this in. You're pretty much always going to need to fill in item libraries, though. Let's see. So yeah, Cheryl, wait, if you put in 50 and it looks great to you, but then you get complaints about loading, then you might want to scale it back. So I think that's a perfectly good way to do it. And if that does happen, let me know what that limit ended up being. That's a good question. All right, so I'm going to save this. And so now we do have a carousel for Bunkum. I'm going to try clicking the ancestors button and see if that works better. No, I'm still getting that weird load error. So I'm not sure why that is. And unfortunately, it's going to make it really hard to show the next part. Try hiding bucket. Okay. I'm going to save that. Oh, that worked. Thank you. Okay, so if you run into that where like your grid is coming up essentially blank, then apparently if you go over here to your menu and hide bucket, it should work. So I appreciate that, Luan. All right, so this is the one that we've just created. Carousels missing their buckets can cause the grid to fail. Okay, that's what was happening here because the carousel does not have a bucket yet. That's what we need to do next. The newest items by shelving location carousel exists, but there's nothing in it yet. And we would know that if we went into the bucket itself for it. We'd see that it was blank. So what we're going to do is we're going to select it and we're going to come up here to actions and choose refresh selected. And so that should basically trigger the automatic process of identifying those items that fit within the parameters we created. So we said, you know, we want to have a carousel that includes items that have been added within the last year. We want 30 of them, and we want them to be owned by these 3 branches in Bunkum. And we want them to be shelved in these 2 specific shelving locations. And when we refresh it, that's actually what tells Evergreen to go find those items. It will eventually populate on its own in production. It does not in Next. So in Next, you have to, if you're playing around, you do have to manually find it. You can leave it in production and it'll eventually do it itself, but I would suggest just going ahead and refreshing immediately so that you're not sitting there with that blank bucket. Let's go ahead and take a look at this carousel. So I'm going to go into the OPAC for Bunkum. Next, isn't it? Just a second. I always get this wrong. I can never remember how to do the OPAC URLs for the next server. Yep. And here is our carousel that we've just created. So these are all items that were added to the catalog within the last year. They are all owned by one of the 3 branches I selected in Bunkum, and they are all within one of the 2 shelving locations I selected. So either adult fiction or adult audiobook. And I can scroll through. You will see that some of them are missing cover images. So if you are testing out a new carousel and you see that it's got a few missing cover images, then you can get the record ID number from the URL for that title, and then you can go back into the backend in Evergreen and upload a cover image for it. So that is the process of creating an automatic carousel. basically you are coming into your carousel uh, configuration menu. You are creating a new carousel. You're choosing your type. You're setting the parameters of how to select items to populate that carousel. Then you're refreshing it, and then it should be showing up on your OPAC. Are there any questions about that? We do have just a few minutes left, so I'm going to spend that time talking about how to create a manual carousel, but if there are questions, I'm happy to answer them. The manual process is very similar to the regular process with one major difference, which is that you have to add the items to the bucket manually. So you have to actually go into the bucket within the record bucket interface and add your titles to that bucket. Then once those titles have been added, they will be the ones that show up in that carousel until you go in and change them. So you can have a single bucket that you use for this carousel and you can consistently go in and change the titles, but it'll be a manual process every time. It will not automatically update it. So if you wanted to have something that has to do with, a theme of the month, or basically like a digital display, or if you wanted to have book club selections or something like that, you can do that using a bucket, using a manual carousel. You just need to be on top of updating them. So the process for this, we're going to once again choose new carousels. And again, we'll this time, just for the sake of avoiding that issue with the loading, because I do need to have the bucket visible, I'm going to put this. No, never mind. I'm going to name this for March. And I'm going to choose manual as my carousel type. I don't need an age limit because I'm choosing what goes in here. It doesn't matter how old they are. I do need a maximum items. The number of items I put in the bucket, if I have a maximum of 20 and I only add 5 to the bucket, all 5 will show up. If I have a maximum of 20 and I have 30 in the bucket, then Evergreen will randomly select 20 of those 30 titles to include in the carousel. So I can put this in if I want to be able to have sort of a lot to choose from. Or I can make sure that what I have in my bucket matches with what my maximum is. If I want it to be very very specific. I do not need to put in item libraries or shelving locations because again, I'll be choosing things manually, but I do need to make it active. So I'll do that. And now I am going to go into my record bucket administration. So I'm going to come here under the cataloging menu to record buckets. And I am looking for one that has this system generated bucket information here in the name. Actually, you know what? Let's filter to a bucket type of carousel. I can see everything. Today is the 26th, so it's going to be this one here. 176 was the automatic one I created, which you can see has 30 entries. 177 is the manual one that I'm working on right now, which has 0 entries because I haven't added anything yet. So from the bucket interface, I would open up the bucket and then I would get items into my bucket in whatever way I choose. And so those of you familiar with buckets, this is going to function the same way as you would populate a bucket. So you could do this by doing a catalog search and moving things from into the basket and then from the basket to the bucket. You could also do this as the result of a report, or you could upload a CSV file, a lot of different ways to get items into a bucket. We can also just do a search here into the catalog directly from the bucket. Of course, now that search is going to take a long time. We would select an item and we would add it to the bucket that we want, which is not actually showing up in here. 175 is not the number that I want. Oh, 175 was the number I want. So then from here, you'd be able to go into your OPAC, and then that one would be visible as well. In fact, if we refresh this page, it should show up. It doesn't because it is still empty, I think. This 175 is not the correct. Yeah, 177 is the bucket. Let me just try adding. A slightly different way. I'll do the same thing where I'm going from a catalog search. But rather than doing that direct add from the line within the search results, I'll try it from the basket. So I think what was happening there is the you have a very limited number of buckets that show up in the drop down from here. But when I go in this way, I should have more. I'll put in my ID. There we go. So I've put in my ID number bucket, and that's working. I'm not really sure why it's not showing up. And so now we have an one item in this bucket. And so hopefully that does mean the carousel will show up. It does. There's only one thing in it, but it is visible. So we are at our time, a little bit over actually. So thank you for sticking around. But are there questions about carousels? All right. Well, I will get this recording up onto YouTube. In the meantime, if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to answer any questions via email or a ticket or Basecamp. And please, if this is something that you're interested in continuing to customize at your library, please feel free to also kind of share this with other people at your library who may be interested in helping with those projects. So thanks for being here, and I will see you next time.